Well, hello, international audience. We've got a few more minutes before the show actually starts, but I wanted to share with you some information about our guest at the half hour. At 11:30 Mountain Standard Time or 1:30 Eastern Time, we're going to have Ray Sefo, who is, he's got titles of WMTF, ISCA, K1 titles, World Heavyweight. He is a man amongst boys when it comes to knowing and understanding the fight world in the cage and ultimate fighting arenas from almost inception. Born and raised New Zealander, long tradition. He's now the head of fighting operations for PFL, Professional Fighters League. We're going to be talking to him at the end of the half hour. Ray is a great guy, and until I started looking at Ray, I didn't understand my history with him. I've been watching him for a long, long time. I'm very impressed with his tenacity, his toughness, his resiliency in the ring, and his professionalism now that he's in an executive role with PFL. So stay tuned. We'll be with you in 5. I'll get my Facebook audience up on my site. To get that started. All right. Our theme for today is on managing expectations and intangibles. What influence they have on your success. We'll be talking about that. Get everything tuned in here a little bit. All right. And about 3 minutes before. Good morning to Facebook fans and my international audience. We're going to be starting our KUHS launch in just a moment for 360 Performance Talk. We're about 2 minutes before the hour of 11 here in wonderful Denver, Colorado, or North Columbus, where the studio is at. I'm your host, Laurel White, with 360 Performance Talk. And we'll be back to you shortly. So enjoy. Hey, good morning, Megan. How are you? Good to have you with us. We're going to be starting in just a couple of minutes. We got Mr. DJ on the tunes right now. We'll be pulling back from that shortly. Good morning, Anita. The theme for today, Anita, is about managing expectations and the relevancy and importance of intangibles in managing your success. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to do it around the background of one of my clients who's going to be fighting for $1 million this next week on New Year's Eve. His name is Josh Cuddly Bear Copeland. And at the half hour, we're going to talk to an ex-fighter. He's retired. He's since retired. Now he's the director of fighting operations for Professional Fighters League, PFL, who is the league that is behind the fight this weekend in New York City, which I'll be going out to and watching and reporting on live from New York City in the Hulu Theater at I'll get it out in a minute. I'll get it out of my head. It's Madison Square Garden. It's at the Hulu Theater in Madison Square Garden, where many notable fights have taken place in the last few weeks. This one is a cage fight, professional fighters in a cage fight scenario. But I love the format and how the fighters qualify. We're going to talk a little bit about that with Ray Sofa, and let Ray share with us his insights as a fighter and now as an executive. Ray Sefo, S-E-F-O is what it says his last name. So, without further ado, let's get it started. All right, everybody, now we're back on live at KUHSdenver.com. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman of 360 Performance Talk. You're listening to Zane and Hey, Mr. DJ. And as we pull back from that and welcome you all to the show, our theme today is about managing expectations and the power and influence of intangibles and how they influence our success, especially for champions. If you've watched any sports at all, especially during the holiday season with basketball at the college level, and NBA as well is getting started. We've got football ending with the bowl season, and you'll hear announcers talk about the intangibles, the rise up of an unknown, and that unknown shocking the audience, shocking their team with outstanding performance, and the announcers usually credit the intangibles for that. So what are those intangibles? Well, I tend to relate them, as we do every week on our show, with the 4 segments on mindset, skills, mental condition, and performance results. Those are the areas where intangibles pop up. And usually those intangibles are quickly and easily identified through our 5 senses. The awareness of your mental condition, your mindset when you wake up every day and realize, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Staying in that moment, staying in that now, but in that moment when you start the day with some form of positivity, you're reflecting on the basis of your 5 senses and your awareness of how in tune they are to your path. Well, we bring that forward. We talk about then skills. My definition of skills are those 5 senses. And today we're going to talk a lot about breathing. And just like in real estate, location, location, location. In mental conditioning, many times the essence of who I am and what I will be doing and the degree of excellence I bring to that process is going to start with the breath. As simple as it sounds, just breathe. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then reflect on the environments. Every week we talk about the influence of the environment. So that's where a lot of the intangibles are brought forward or diminished. If you're going to excel, you're in control of your environment. You see the details. You see the details to such a degree that you can almost predict in advance what might be an obstacle to your ability to continue performing at the high level you want to. And by doing that, and I'm going to tag Mr. Heckroff, good morning, Bill, and the other Henry in my life, Mr. Muck, good morning. How are you doing? And I agree with you. College football, lots of games this weekend. I looked at the schedule. I think I could sit in a chair tomorrow from about 11 o'clock until about midnight and not stop watching any football. In fact, I'd have to be using the remote control to move around. So with that, as a great segue, Henry, I'm going to talk a little bit about professional football and the NFL and just, give you some playoff scenarios. This is week 17. Got a couple more things going on before everything ends up, but there are some givens that we know are here. And there's going to be a lot of reflection on intangibles for some of those teams that are still not sure whether they're going to be in the playoffs or not. So for everyone out there watching and listening, we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to start with the NFC first. Who's clinched things? The New Orleans Saints have clinched the NFC South Division title and home field advantage. The Rams, on the other hand, have clinched the division title, no determination on home field. The Bears have got the NFC North, and the Dallas Cowboys have the NFC East Division title. And the Seattle Seahawks have actually, sorry guys, I gotta turn off my phone here and go to a different place. Sorry about that. And technology is my friend. Turn off that, and we're going to go to settings, and we're going to go to do not disturb. There we go. And we're all set with that. Okay, so back to the football. NFC. So the Seattle Seahawks have a playoff berth. They have kicked in. Good morning, Andy. Gosh, happy New Year to you all. Thank you for checking in with me this morning. It's going to be a great show. Love it, love it, love it. And always, Mary Louise, you know I love you. All right, so on with the football stuff. So Seattle Seahawks have a playoff berth. Now here's the what ifs. We have the Los Angeles Rams will clinch a bye if there's a couple of wins and losses. And the Los Angeles, I don't want to get into the details of that. If, then, what if, okay, so on. So let's just say there's a lot of convoluted things going on in both the NFC and the AFC. So let me continue with the AFC and tell you who's clinched what. So who's clinched? Can you guess? They wear red. They got a really cool quarterback. Second year in the league, Kansas City Chiefs, absolutely playoff berth. Another Los Angeles team, but the Chargers, they have a playoff berth clinched. The Patriots are AFC East Division title owners right now. They've clinched that, and the Houston Texans have a playoff berth that they have clinched. And once again, there's lots of what ifs on the home field advantage and division title for the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City has to win, they'll get it clinched then, or the Chargers have to lose, New England has to lose, if Kansas City doesn't win. I'm guessing Kansas City's going to beat Oakland on Sunday. They play Oakland at 4:25 Eastern Time on CBS on Sunday. Okay, so moving on, a couple other notables. Here's some games to watch. And I'm not going to call them predictions, they're just my interpretations. And anybody can interpret the data, right? Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns, that's going to be a game to watch. Cleveland has to win to give themselves any shot at all at a playoff berth. And I think the same thing is true for Baltimore. Baltimore's 9-6, Cleveland 7-7. Quite honestly, I'm going to just tell you things about what I feel about Cleveland. Their receiving core is one of the best in the NFL. They have not gotten the props for that. Now they've got a quarterback that can actually put the ball where it needs to be placed accurately and with some guts on it, so that receivers have a chance to make big plays. Look to that as being one of the defining factors. And in any game, no matter who's playing, all three components, offense, defense, and special teams. I think if Cleveland can have a three components win on the field, they're going to have a great chance of beating Baltimore on Sunday. That's again on CBS at 4:25 Eastern Time. Also note that Baltimore hasn't been all that great in their special teams area. They've been better in the latter part of the season. That's a good plus for them. But I'm gonna tilt the hand towards Cleveland. Baltimore's got a great quarterback, the kid that's come in and taken over for Flacco. But it's gonna be interesting. It's an interesting game. And the other one that's gonna be interesting to me has got our Denver Broncos involved. I wrote down in my notes here, who wants it? And what is it? The it's interesting. It's not necessarily a win. It could be who wants to keep their job. And it's not just the players, right? So Los Angeles Chargers, who are 11-4 at Denver on Sunday on CBS. That'll be a 2:20, 2:25 game starter. Now, this is a case where the Broncos could be a spoiler in the season and playoff thing for the Chargers. But I think it's more important is who wants it. And the it is going to be continue to play, continue to coach, and most of those, and all that comment is about the Denver Broncos. It's not about the LA Chargers. That's huge. Now, another note I made is big game on my sheet here. is Indianapolis Colts versus Tennessee. They're both 9-6. They both have the capabilities of having all three aspects of the game go their way. If both teams are in alignment in their mindset, their skills, their mental condition, and their performance results expectations, it's going to be one heck of a game to watch. I think that's a game to tune in just to watch it because of the competition that's going to be on the field. Good stuff. Because both quarterbacks are clicking on offense and their defenses step up. I'm going to tilt it towards Tennessee on the defensive side. I'll get a little brief on that. Nancy, good morning. Well, good afternoon for you out there in Iowa. But good to have you with me. Happy New Year to you. And say hi to Pat, would you? You know, the tall, skinny guy you hang out with? Yeah, that guy. The last thing I want to talk about, the historical rivalries, my note. Pittsburgh Steelers 8-6-1 against Cincinnati 6-9. Regardless of that scenario there, Pittsburgh needs to win just to make a demonstrative statement and include themselves in the AFC North Division title. They need to win that. But it's gonna be a game. No matter where, since Cincinnati is in the same kind of boat that the Broncos are in, their spoiler role. Just watch the game. It's going to be a great game to watch and be a fan of because of the rivalry, the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati rivalry. Now, that being said, all of these teams I've mentioned with the NFC and AFC, they're managing their expectations. They have expectations for playoff berths, for home field advantage. Just getting in the hunt and continuing to prove at this time of the season is when you want to peak to really move it forward. And identify in your preparation, in your practice, what are those intangibles I need to call upon to practice on? And the question for me that I get quite routinely from my athletes and my executives is, can I train and practice using my intangibles? And what intangibles have the greatest influence on my performance outcomes? And we'll talk about that in detail as we go on this morning. And in particular, we'll use examples as what is playing behind me here. The fights of Ray Seffo. Ray is a historical leader in the K1, Muay Thai, and cage fighting arenas going back into the early 90s. And now he's an executive with Professional Fighters League, which is headquartered out in Washington, D.C. They're showcasing their $1 million championships across all weight classes in New York City at Madison Square Garden in the Hulu Theater. So I'll be out there doing some interviews and talking to my colleague and friend Josh Cubby Bear Copeland. He's going after the heavyweight prize and title for PFL. The prize is $1 million. People, that's worth some. Get yourself ready to go after that. But as we start every week's show on mindset, if you're facing challenges, both whether they be physical or mental or both, what do you do to manage your expectations? Let me give you a couple of things to think about. First of all, begin with the end in mind. Set yourself up before you even start your goal setting process. What is it I want? And why do I want it? There's a lot of rhetoric around these days about answer the why. The power is in the answer to the why. Well, that gets a little slippery for me. It's not practical enough. It's not tangible enough. But answering that question for yourself every day when you get up in your mindset is beginning with the end in mind. Sitting on the edge of the bed, as I've talked about in the past, taking that big breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, getting yourself centered is processes and techniques to begin with the end in mind. It's hard to make goals and set goals and then take action on those goals if you don't know what they look like out there in front of you. So begin with the end in mind is the first step. Second step is create a positive mindset. Remove the negatives. Remember last week and the weeks before I said I've changed my mindset. I'm going to start with removing the negatives because then I get to a positive. Rather than starting with thinking about the positive first, can be kind of disappointing. And in some cases, kind of difficult to keep myself energized and powered up for. It's much more effective if I look at removing the negatives. Identify where those are, both in behavior and actions. And what are the people and things that support those negatives? And remove those. Move those off to the side. Because the outcome is a positive. Or worst case scenario, it's a neutral setting. So that's the second piece. After begin with the end in mind, remove the negatives. The third thing in setting up your mindset for managing expectations is really focusing on what are those intangibles I'm going to draw upon to practice and train myself with. Well, that third one is set goals. If you set goals, you're gonna be in a place that is aligned with you. Now remember, these are goals that are simple and set up for you. They're SMART goals. I've talked about SMART goals in the past. They're specific, they're manageable, attainable, realistic, and timely. That each of those words around the moniker SMART goals, it references to you. They're about you. So let me summarize those three things. Begin with the end in mind. Look beyond where you're at. Imagine when you're setting up your mindset in that positive space. Begin with the end in mind. The second thing is then begin with the end in mind based on removing the negative. Remove the negative. It's going to be positive. So if you start the day with that big breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and you get centered in a positive way, do it with the intent of removing the negatives, identifying those people and things that represent those negatives, and then strategically remove those. The third thing then is set goals, SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. SMART goals. So that's my piece for mindset today, because in about 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Ray Seffo. Ray is the head of fighting operations at PFL, Professional Fighter Group. Pardon me while I take a drink of water. Thank you for that break. I needed that. And speaking of breaks, every day I take up my germ block. And by the way, for the Facebook for folks out there, it's backwards. See? Germ block. It's from avcare.com. Or you can go on Facebook. Or not Facebook, sorry. Amazon.com. And get some germ block. Look up germ block. This is a non-alcohol based hand sanitizer. Love it, and it doubles as a lotion. I like that feeling, but the non-alcohol based stuff doesn't dry out my skin, my cuticles. Not them. All right, Paul, I know you're giggling. I get you. I'm sensitive to it. I'm still the, manly man, but you gotta have my lotion. We're out here in the arid climate of Colorado. Stay hydrated. Use lotion, non-alcohol based. It kills the germs, right? Kills the germs. The other piece we talk about, now remember, it's use my code LW010 with the empowerbodycare.com, empowerbodycare.com, and this is, put it where it hurts. It's got this great roar, and Paul Young in particular, that's what I'm talking to. I've been playing sport, put it where it hurts. My hands as a catcher, point guard in basketball, my hands are always bumped up and hurt, aching, and as I get older, it's not going to get any better. So empowerbodycare.com is where you can get it. It will be sent to you. It's a cannabis-based product, which is why I love it, because it gets into the tissue. It works on the hurt in the right ways, in a controlled way. But you can get it with a special treat, LW010. Use that code when you order. It will be beneficial to you. empowerbodycare.com. So, we're here with, I'm on radio. I have a face for radio, and yet I have trouble talking. So, we're KUHSdenver.com. You're listening to 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Laurel Whiteman, every Friday at 11 a.m., bringing you insights on performance issues that make a difference and that help you be consistent in delivering the highest quality possible. Today, we're talking about managing expectations. And what's the role of intangibles on influencing my performance? Well, intangibles. I ask you to look at your five senses as the source of your intangibles. Are you seeing the details? And that's where we're at right now. We're in our skill set. Before we bring Ray Seffo in at the half hour, we're going to talk about Three important things. It's one of the five that I think is most important right now when you're managing your expectations, is to breathe. Because when managing your expectations is challenged and you're having a difficult time with that, take a breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Now, why is that? Why in through the nose, out through the mouth? Well, it's because oxygen, O2, not CO2. If I breathe through my mouth like some kind of desperate locomotive, it's going to be partly CO2 and part oxygen, not optimal. If you breathe through your nose, it's optimal, and then you expel the CO2. So you're charging up the tissue that gets the O2 first, which makes sense, is your brain. You want to be able to think smart, respond quickly with your thinking, be responsive to that audience and to the performance you're expecting. It's hard to take action if the tissue in the brain that's making the muscles go isn't properly charged up and active. So that's why it's breathe, breathe, breathe. And then the next thing in the intangibles thing is the sight and feeling, what you feel, and not necessarily how when you touch it. But you can get, like wind blows over your skin and you feel the wind. Feel and see things. Be in touch with your environment. And we're going to talk later when we get Ray Cepho on the phone. We're going to talk about the influence of environment and the processes that go into preparing that environment for this great event on New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden in the Hulu Theater, when the 12 classes of champions compete for their $1 million prizes through all weight classes. It's going to be a great day. And my focus is on Josh Copeland, who's the heavyweight fighter going against his competitor for $1 million. So in about 8 minutes, we're going to talk to Ray. But before that, let's finish up on the skill side of things. Why is it important to be in touch with those intangibles? Based, in my opinion, the theory is the five senses is the root of all those intangible skill sets. Well, here's an example of that. If you are not aware of your environment, you didn't take the time to understand the details of your environment, and then a flag, a banner, a pom-pom on the sideline, something caught your attention that you weren't aware of prior to that. Because if you were, it may not distract you. Now, you may still see it, but because you had a previous influence of it, you saw it, you gathered it in, you took it in warm-ups, you brought in those details, it's not going to distract you to a point where it's going to take you away from your performance. But if you don't do that, and it pops up, all of a sudden it could take you, for that brief moment, that intangible moment, could be enough to influence your performance in a negative way. So when you do take it in and you do see the details, your confidence is. When you have high confidence, there's very little hesitation on delivering actions and movements that you're comfortable with. We're going to be talking about the fighting game. If a fighter hesitates to counterpunch, it could be too late. Missed an opportunity. The opponent gets a guard up. But if he's free-flowing and confident, and he's breathing and settled in who he is and the environment, he's seen all the details, he's familiar with the cage, he's gone out pre-fight and seen the audience and where they're sitting, he knows what that place feels like to him. He's confident. He or she is confident. You don't hesitate. Your response time is quicker. The brain is firing in a way that's properly oxygenated so it can be quick in its delivery of the actions. That nerve system across the myelin to get you to activate the training and the practice you put in with that confidence. That's what skills should do for you. So are you aware? Are you aware of your environment? When you're going into work after a holiday, you're taking some time off. Now, some of you may still be on holiday. Yeah, that's for you, Paul. I know you're still on holiday. Of course, every day's kind of a holiday for you, right? And Mary Louise, I know you're on holiday too. No, don't be saying anything else. But when you come back to your office, you come back to that practice arena or that court or that field, and you're going to deliver both your physical and mental execution of excellence. Are you aware? If you are, you will see the punch. You'll make the block on the end so the edge is clear and the running back can get around it. And you'll be able to adjust to the double team after a screen. Watching some great NBA games, and I'm looking forward to some even better NCAA basketball through the rest of the holiday and through the new year. But those are the moments where it's those simple, technical, skill-based efforts. You cannot hesitate. And your awareness of your intangibles based on your five senses will be a huge influence on how quickly you will respond and activate your physical capability. Now, we've got about 5 minutes to go before I bring Ray in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to text Ray and tell him that we're going to be visiting with him just shortly. I will be with you, be calling you in 5. You in 5. There we go. Put it out there. So, in those 5 minutes, we're going to wait. I'm going to, clear my throat and ask you to join me in a cocktail. H2O. Man, it's cold outside today. It's here in Colorado. And with that chill, things dry out. The humidity down. So, hydration. Now, as I say that, I'm going to remind you again, EmpowerBodyCare.com. Bath salts. They have bath salts, so you have the aches and pains from all those holiday basketball tournaments and playing your games that you think you can still play at the age you're at. You can, just keep doing it, but you're going to have aches and pains. Bath salts are great. They have a lotion now in addition to the oils. I like the oils in my bag because of the applicator. It's really nice. The lotion, I tend to use it more at home, especially with the dryness and stuff. It will heal that redness and inflammation and cracking on my face. It's great stuff. CBD is wonders beyond wonders for me, and I'm glad I've discovered it. So, EmpowerBodyCareProducts.com. Please check it out and use the code LW010. 010. Okay, let me check to see if Ray is giving me the thumbs up. Thumbs up on the old text machine. So we'll be back to Ray shortly, dialing him up and getting him on air with us, which is going to be awesome. So as I say that, I'm going to just queue up my phone number for Ray. Thanks, you guys, for bearing with me there. Stick with me. And actually, like Anita and others have shared your comments. Please share comments with me. Ask me a question. Keep me honest, as Mary Louise, you do that all the time. You're keeping me honest, right? Okay, we're going to call Ray. Here we go. Wish me luck. And we got to tune up the board. Get Ray on the phone. It's in my headphones. Loving it. Okay, we're at 360 Performance at KUHSW.com, right here in Denver, Colorado. 11 a.m. every Friday. Still ringing, as you can tell. Get Ray on the phone. Might have been a short 5 minutes. All right, we're going to call Ray back. It was a short 5 minutes. I'll give him a ring back in just a sec. Okay, so I want to make sure I also continue to remind everybody and set the stage. We talked about mindset at the beginning of the show, which we do every Friday. Then we got the skills segment. We're going to get into the mental conditioning side as we bring Ray in to the show, and then we end the show with performance results. And Henry has asked me a great question. When am I going to be broadcasting on Monday? Now, Monday is going to be very interesting. I get out to New York, Henry, at about, I'll be at the New Yorker Hotel down across the street from the Madison Square Garden at about 1:30. So I'm going to be kind of getting myself acclimated there. So I'm going to have a broadcast on Facebook Live in the late afternoon or mid-afternoon for Denver time to kind of set things up. And then I'll have more information. So check my Facebook page and Instagram about the schedule, because I haven't got the fighting schedule as to when the heavyweights actually fight. They're not necessarily going to put the heavyweights last. It depends on, I think NBC Sports has something to do with it. So I'll have that scheduled this weekend. I intend to do, okay, there's Ray. Ray, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you, sir?
I am excellent. And by the way, just so you know, you're on the air.
Yeah, sorry, I was in the elevator when you called.
Don't apologize, my friend. I am so proud and pleased to have you on the air with me today to talk about this wonderful event on New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden, where the Professional Fighters League is going to present the champions. Who's going to win $1 million, right?
Well, that's just it. That's the fun of the sport is that you never know. Anything can happen, right?
Oh.
And so there's six world titles on the line. There's $1 million that's attached to each world title there. So, yeah, no, it's really good fun win.
Now, Ray, tell me a little bit about how important the process that the fighters went through, that PFL created, is to the success of this tournament and then going forward. This is unique. You guys are doing something that nobody else in the fight world is doing.
Right, exactly. And obviously it's very important that all these guys have fought through the regular season, the playoffs, of course. Now they're being raised to fight for the championship for the $5 million. In the regular season, all these 12 fighters have had to fight 2 regular season fights to qualify for the playoffs. They got into the playoffs. The playoffs is they have to fight 2 fights in one night. And from there, whoever the finalists are from the semifinals face off against each other at on New Year's Eve at the Garden for the bout as well as the $1 million. So that whole process, every single one of these guys went through. And, we started with 72 fighters, 12 fighters per division, along with alternates. So roughly around about 80 fighters. And we've narrowed it down to 12. And so the 12 guys, 2 from each weight division, would be competing New for the strap as well as the $1 million.
Now, Ray, that process, when you mentioned that to qualify to the championship, fighters had to fight 2 bouts in one night. That tends to tell me that the quality of the fighters is pretty stout. I mean, to survive that to the championship, you've got to be pretty well paying attention to your training processes and the expectations you have for yourself as a fighter. Is that setting PFL apart with the other leagues like UFC and others?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And listen, I got nothing but love for the UFC, Bellator, and all the other MMA organizations out there. They help promote the sport. But our format is the first league format that's ever been done. When we were WSOF, we were a promotion, and now that we're PFL, we're a league. And again, there's a regular season, the playoffs, and the championships. And this format allows our fighters to be in control of their destiny. I don't get to select who fights for the title. The guys that earn the right to fight for the title, the guys that have fought their way from regular season playoffs to the championship, is the guy that's being in control of this destiny, and it's the guys that are now fighting for the title and $1 million. And so that's what really sets us apart. And the fact that we're the first MMA league. It makes it pretty special for us. But, again, nothing but love for everybody else.
Well, and I want to echo that along with you. I think the fighting game is improving. I'm a big wrestling fan from way back. The Hulk Hogan is one of my heroes. And
right.
And as I said to you, Ray, I had followed you back into the late '90s when you started your fighting career. And and your fighting career has been kind of a family thing. You've got cousins as well as brothers. Either they're helping you or they're actually fighting themselves. But you announced your retirement on MMAfighting.com back in May of 2018. But prior to that, you go back way back into the 90s in New Zealand with, I can't believe this, but you were a heavyweight and a cruiserweight back in the 90s?
That's correct. I was 18, 19 years old. No, I was 18 when I started. So I started off at heavyweight and eventually had to go to cruiserweight because my teammate and friend was the heavyweight national champion. And so I didn't want to fight him. And so for me, it was my coach at the time, which was Lolo Hemuli. He says, Ray, what do you want to do? And so I decided to go down to cruiserweight. And fortunately for me, at the time when I made that decision, I didn't really think about it. But fortunately for me, because I was still young and, cutting weight was easy. And of course, I don't cut weight like the way these guys cut weight these days. For me, when I cut weight for the fight, I cut weight from the day I start training. So it's rough for the first 2-3 weeks. And then the last, I pretty much do a 10-week camp. So the last 7 weeks is the piece of cake.
Well, I tell you what, Ray, your mindset and methodology for succeeding at the level you did back in the 90s has brought you to the place you're at today, and it's fitting that you are the head of fighter operations or fighting operations for PFL, because that insight and the history that you have experienced as a fighter has got to be valuable to the young men and women that are coming into PFL and competing for these titles.
Right, listen, I think the good Lord every day that I get to do what I love to do and what I'm passionate about. And, not everybody gets to have that kind of pleasure. And so I'm very thankful that I'm able to do what I love, and the fact that I could pass on knowledge from my own experiences to not only to our fighters, but also to some of the fighters that I coach. I actually went through it back in Vegas. And also, our young amateur fighters that are, starting their careers. And so, I'm very, very thankful that I'm able to pass on some knowledge so that they could kind of, because, along the way of my career, I pretty much had to learn along the way for myself. And, of course, I would get good information as well from my coaches at the time. But most times you had to experience the things yourself and understand the emotions that goes with it, understand the ups and downs, and understand, that it doesn't matter what people say, that, you just got to go out there and give it the best you got. And when you know that win or lose, you give it all you got, then you got nothing but you can look yourself in the mirror and just say, listen, we gave it the best we could. You know what I mean?
Well, and Ray, I as I told you before, one of the epic fights for me that you fought was against Pele, a different Pele than the soccer guy, back in 2003. And your footwork and punching ability are well known from your past. But so what I want to ask you about the fighter relationships you have now, we're setting up the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden this week coming. Is there anything special you want to see in that environment? I mean, obviously the cage is the cage, but is there anything that you make sure is there for the fighters to make that environment comfortable for them and optimal for them to perform in? Or is it just pretty much the cage and the mat and that's it?
Well, I always have a fight talk after the weigh-ins, and I always tell the fighters that I'm there. Anybody wants to ask me anything that they need to know, anything they want to get off their chest, and that they feel like they can't talk to anybody else, I'm always there. And so, I also tell them when they're in this amazing, famous arena, Madison Square Garden, it's to soak up all the energy that's in that building, because there's so much legacy and so much history in this building that, soak up all the energy that's in there and give it the best they got. Because, this life is not a very long life. Fighter's life is 10 or 15 years time span, and so they got to give it everything they got.
Well, that's a good point, Ray. You've got a number of fighters in the title bouts this week coming up on New Year's Eve that are in their 30s and have not taking anything away from them. They've prepared well and they've worked hard to get where they're at. But it surprised me at how many of the title fighters of those 12 are in their 30s and upper 30s in some cases. Josh Copeland is an example. I think Josh is 37 now, I believe.
Right.
So when the Hulu Theater, you mentioned that there's a lot of tradition at Madison Square Garden for fighting in general, not just cage fighting and ultimate fighting or MMA fighting, but boxing as well. In fact, last week at the Hulu Theater, some history was made in the boxing world at that location. So is there anything that PFL is doing to really heighten that realization? Is there anything that they're putting in the arena? I'm trying to encourage those who are going, like myself, to be aware of the effort and time that PFL is putting into making sure that this environment is optimized for the fighters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, you got to come down and enjoy these and see it for yourself in terms of just feeling the atmosphere, understanding, the magnitude of the event. I mean, this is history in the making. There's never been 6 world titles on the night before. There's never been $6 million that's attached to those 6 world titles. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of positive energy that comes with the bouts and with the fighters, with the whole event, with PFL. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those things where you got to come in and just experience the whole atmosphere. Because, you can watch it from TV and TV looks great, but you don't understand the atmosphere when you're there and feeling the energy of the fighters, the energy of the crowd.
Yeah.
It's an experience in itself.
I'm looking forward to that because the intimacy of the Hulu Theater is part of its reputation, especially with the number of fights that have been held there and have represented some great history. So, of those 6 fighters and the 6 million or the 12 fighters in the 6 fights, which ones would you say are must-sees? That if you're going to go to the fights, which ones are must-sees in your opinion of the 6 weight classes that are going to be exhibited?
I think they're all must-see. These guys have battled hard and sacrificed a lot to get to this day. And so I think every fight is an exciting fight. I think every fight is a must-see fight because every single one of these guys, these 12 guys, have earned and like I said, have fought hard to get to this point. And so again, I fought 3 fighters in one night through K1, my time in K1 and that, and it's not easy to do. It takes a special man to get in there and fight 2 guys in one night or 3 guys in one night. And so every single one of these guys has earned that right, has earned that spot. And so I think it's a must-see fight. Every fight is a must-see fight because they're hungry for it, and it's going to be an exciting night.
So, Ray, are there any exhibitions that will precurse the fight night of the six fight card, or is PFL going to introduce some things to get people kind of excited about the future? I'm trying to remember. Isn't there a women's exhibition fight going on?
Well, it's not an exhibition. It's actually a fight.
Gotcha.
But there will be, yes. Kayla Harrison will be facing Morial. Morial is, she's got some experience behind her. And so, Kayla's had 2 fights. She has a lot of judo experience. She's a lot of high-level judo matches. And so I think, it's going to be a good fight. And their fight pretty much is in between. So there'll be first 3 of the title fights, and then it'll be Kayla and Morial, and then it'll be than the last three title fights. So, the whole night is exciting, and if you can't make it, then make it out. Then you can watch it live on NBC Sports Network.
Good segue, my friend. That's where I wanted to go. Give our props to NBC Sports. And your effort was crucial in securing that for PFL. Actually, before you became PFL, right? Wasn't the NBC Sports part of your organization before it switched to the PFL name?
That's right. Yes. NBC has been great. NBC Sports has been great to us, and they were with us from the start with PFL. With WSOF.
Yep.
Now that we're PFL, so we're very fortunate and very happy to be partners with them.
So, Ray, who's going to be doing the announcing for NBC Sports?
Todd Harris is going to be the anchor guy, and of course, Boss Ruben and Randy Couture will be the color commentators.
Excellent.
Of course, Eve and Caroline will be, doing interviews and whatnot, and so that's pretty much the whole team.
Brother, we work well together because that was my next segue is to the color people. Is she British, New Zealand, Australian? Where's she from?
She's British, yes.
British, okay. I didn't want, the accent always attracts me, brings me in. So for the people that are listening to us today and are wondering about this event on New Year's Eve, it is something to raise a glass to, either prior to or during your celebrating the incoming of the new year. But NBC Sports, New Year's Eve, it's Eastern time. When does it start, Ray? 4 o'clock or 7?
That's a good question. I think the doors open at 4, I believe, or 5, and the show starts around 6 or 7.
And that's Eastern time, correct?
Eastern time, that's correct.
All right, so that means for us out here in the Mountain States, things will get done New York time before midnight, I believe. So there is absolutely no excuse for anybody not to tune in to NBC Sports at 5 o'clock for us mountain people, and going from 5 until 9 p.m. to get your holiday spirit going and charged up. You're watching some great fights, and to celebrate the fact that we have a local boy from Arvada, Colorado. Aurora, Colorado. Josh Cuddly Bear Copeland is competing for the $1 million at the heavyweight class. And Josh has been on our show a few times. He's one of the reasons why I'm motivated to go out to New York and visit with Ray and the crew out there at PFL. But Ray, talk to me a little bit about why people should watch PFL fights. Because I've had people ask me, why are you so interested in fighting? I said, because it's a great exhibition of athletic talent. You have no idea the amount of preparation and execution of the physical activity these fighters go through. It's something you have to really appreciate. Just like if you appreciate boxing, shift over to PFL and watch what goes on there, or UFC, or any of the Ultimate Fighting leagues that are out there. So give me your take on it, Ray. Why convince the people that are not sure why they should tune in to watching the PFL championships?
Well, first of all, why not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Secondly, you're a fight fan. You're a fight fan. I mean, I watch Bellator shows. I watch the UFC. I watch, fights on YouTube from all over the world, from Russia, from Japan, from pretty much all over the world. I'm just that guy that, I love watching fights. And so, for anything, to start watching PFL is that you got to start watching from the beginning, because once the season starts, for example, our 2019 season starting in May, and once the season starts, you got to keep an eye on all the guys that's in the thing. You got to tune in to watch, because that's the only way you can follow who makes the playoffs. Because again, in the regular season, guys have to earn points. When they win, they earn points.
Yeah.
There's a different point structure when you get a win by knockout or submission to winning by decision. And so, they got to win points to get to the playoffs, and then the playoffs again to witness history in the making, to watch championship fights. You got to tune in and watch, or come and enjoy the atmosphere in the arena. And just to go back on your question prior to this about the doors actually open at 5:30, and the first fight at 7 p.m.
Excellent. Well, and I want to build on what you said about following the fighters. Again, we have a local boy from Colorado that's competing for the heavyweight $1 million, but he had to wait till the very last fight of the season to know if he had enough points to get in. And I think his story, and then watching his playoff fights, and Josh knocking out the guy that he in his second fight was critical because he had a cut over his right eye. And so, it's
that's right.
The stories and the dynamics of how you get where you're going is really a great piece that PFL has brought to the fight game that I think should bring in a lot of people in the audience. And quite honestly, I'd rather see fighting in a cage than on the plains of Afghanistan or in the deserts of Syria. If we could replace that level of fighting and its consequences with something more controlled, more athletic, more skill-based, I'm all for that. Shift our attention to something that's a little bit more manageable than the consequences we find in war. So anyway, that's my political statement for the day. Leave it for where it sits. But Ray, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, in your world, your world and your family, how many family members are still actively in the fight world in your family?
I think I have a few cousins that are in boxing right now and a few in MMA, but there's a few cousins that's in the fight game still.
I'm just trying to figure out who should I be following. Should I be following?
Right. The MMA, the ones that are in MMA are slowly coming up, and some of them have just had their fourth or fifth amateur fight, so looking to turn pro soon.
Gotcha.
And so they're getting into some of one of my nephews and his buddy are looking to start promoting some fights in Australia, that kind of thing. So there's still a few of the family members that are still involved in martial arts.
Well, so as the name implies, Sugar Feet Cephal, is that something you look for in a fighter? I'm trying to segue here, Ray, to ask you about what about the up and comers? What's the process? There's amateur class, and then how do you go from amateur to pro and wind up with those great nicknames like what you got, Sugar Feet, or the puncher that you're known to be? What's the progress? What's the steps I need to take to go from amateur to pro?
Yeah, well, first of all, you got to commit yourself to a gym, and a gym that you enjoy being in, because obviously you don't want to go to a gym that you don't enjoy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's first and foremost. And then you got to start training. Give yourself. You obviously don't know. Like for me, when I started training, I never thought about competing. Matter of fact, I never wanted to compete. I wanted to be a cop. And the only reason why I ended up in competition was because I was challenged to a fight. And later on, I found out the reason why that guy challenged me to a fight. I was a nobody. I didn't have a fight. The guy had 7 fights, just something like five wins and 2 losses as an amateur. And so, I ended up taking the challenge, and I won that, and that's how I got into fighting. So, first of all, you got to go into a gym and train, and first you got to love the training, and then if competition is something that you want to do, then you start looking at those avenues, and then you got to make sure you have a good coach that can see if you have the potential, if you have the will, the guts to be in the cage or the ring. And then along with that, their coach is going to be knowledgeable enough about the sport and the game that he can guide you and give you some guidance on who's your first fight and what's your second fight and when can you turn pro. So for me, I fought. I think it was after my second amateur fight, I fought for the national amateur title.
Was that in New Zealand, Ray?
Say that again?
Was that in New Zealand?
Yes, that's back in New Zealand. And then after I won the national title as an amateur, I turned pro, or I defended that title once actually. So I fought 4 amateur fights. After I defended it, I knocked out my opponent in the second round, I believe. My coach then said, I think you're ready to go pro. And I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
And so he had asked me what my thoughts were, and I said, well, I'd like to fight the champion. And he looked at me and thought that I was kind of crazy, but at the same time, it wasn't that I was trying to be arrogant or disrespectful. It was just that I was confident in my ability, and I was confident with what I've seen with the current champion as a pro. I was, almost 150% sure in my mind I could beat him. And so that fight was made. And so there's a lot of different avenues. I mean, mine obviously was a little bit different.
So Ray, in the States here, Ray, does PFL have resources that they'll share with fighters to tell them, okay, you're in Colorado. Here's a gym you could check out because we know that they're good. Here's the place to contact when you're ready to go pro. Is there a place that these young amateur fighters can go to discover the answers to the questions you got answered for yourself here in the States?
Most times they'll reach out via email or text or social media, or those that know my number or whatnot. They'll ask questions. Where did they go? And I'll direct them in the right direction.
So let's give our listeners. I know there's some people listening. I've got them tuned up on my Facebook page here they're asking those questions, or that they haven't asked, they're thinking about them. So PFL, what's PFL's website that they can get connection to you through the website? Is it PFL.com?
It's PFLMMA.com.
PFLMMA.com, and just go in there, folks, and ask a question. If you're interested in a reference to a gym, a trainer, a coach, how to go from amateur to pro, I tell you what, I've watched enough as a fan that I can tell you that the PFL formula for presenting a great, entertaining, and competitive fighting scene is it's got a great model. I love the point system, Ray. I think you guys are onto something, and I think it's going to set the stage for some great competition and some very healthy development of the fight game in MMA fighting. I'm trying to quietly and politely wind us down. We're about 2 minutes before the hour of noon, where we close the show off. And as I do that, Ray, I want to make sure that I emphasize again, PFLMMA.com. If you have any questions, comments, curiosities for Ray or the PFL team out there to understand what your path is in fighting, and if you're anything like Ray Cepho, you know how to take a punch. Ray is one of those guys. And I want to say good day, Tyler. Great to have you hooking in with me today. That's Tyler Pinkerman checking in with me. He's a kid I coached a few times, baseball. But anyway, I digress, Ray. I want to thank you, Ray, so much for your time today. I'll see you on Monday, and we'll face to face and say our hellos face to face on Monday, and enjoy some great fighting on New Year's Eve in New York City at the Madison Square Garden's Hulu Theater. Ray, I'm going to say goodbye to you, and look forward to seeing you on Monday. As I say, good day and great weekend to everybody here at KUHSdenver.com. That was Ray Cepho, the head guy on fighting operations for PFL, Professional Fighters League. Contact them at pflmma.com if you have any questions. But for sure, tune in on Monday evening. It's going to start at 7 p.m. Eastern Time or 5 p.m. Mountain Time. The championship fights, there's going to be 6 fights, 12 fighters fighting for $1 million or a total of $6 million outlay by PFL. They are setting the stage with a new dynamic of fighting, and they help us close off the show today. I'm going to bring you back with, this is a great song, people. We're going to end the show today with Can't Stop Loving You. What a great song. Have a great day, everybody.